Hey, friends, welcome to the Tennis and Bagels podcast. This is Vanch, and I'm joined by my good friend here. He looks really well dressed, looks really happy as well because he's been watching Leylah Fernandez this past week defend her Monterrey title. And we're back together after quite a bit of time. And Owen actually can't join us this week. Unfortunately, he has midterm exams. He's a good university student, and he's gonna do well on his exams. We wish him luck, and he'll join us in the next podcast. But with that, how are you doing, Andre? How's everything going?
Good, good. Of course, both of you guys are very responsible students. Like Avansh was out not only for the podcast but for Twitter for the past few weeks because of midterms and everything. And yeah, Leylah won, and that also had me a little bit swamped with work as well because I was definitely following her at Tennis Canada. It was really good. It was a really fun week and fun matches as well. She played the epic final that she played was. I made a tweet on Tennis Canada saying that she came back from a set down and she was used to come back. So it was after she lost the first set. I tweeted like, Leylah is not unfamiliar with epic comeback, so this is still a game on. I was not expecting that to turn into an actual epic match that could potentially be one of the matches of the year by the end of it. Head of everything, even lights flickering, that caused a lot of controversy. And believe it or not, like I was actually complaining a lot on my personal tweet at Twitter that should be a LED plate because the lights kind of went off like mid point. And the crowds kind of like went a little bit noisier, and they didn't call it a lie. It ended up being a match point for Osorio. And Leylah complained to the umpire. She asked for the lights to be fixed before they started playing. But once that she asked for the supervisor to come in, and then the supervisor came, Leylah never asked for the point to be replayed, apparently. And two, the decision to pause for 15 minutes wasn't hers. It was because the supervisor wanted to fix the lights, but to fix the lights, they needed to turn them off first. So that's why they needed to give it a break. So at the end of the day, if it wasn't for the supervisor, the break would have been probably 3 minutes or so. And they pointed out something really interesting during the commentary, that Leylah never sat down during the break. And Osorio did take a break. She kind of like sat down and waited. And Leylah just kind of felt a little bit more sharp when they came back, and she saved a 5th match point and then won the match, which lasted for like 3 hours and 2 minutes. So like so long. So yeah, it was very interesting. It definitely felt like a much bigger match than when you look at like this is just a 250, but for title defense, the first title defense, you're gonna like this one. This is the first title defense by a Canadian player since Milos Raonic did it in San Jose in 2013. So it's been almost 10 years that a Canadian player defended a title on any tour. So
That's a sick stat right there. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't really watching tennis the last 1 week, but when I saw this result, I was quite happy because I thought, these are two players who have really sort of ascended to the top now in women's tennis.
Mhm.
I mean, Camila Osorio Serrano has had a fantastic last 6 months or so. Like I remember her getting to the final in Tenerife or something after the U.S. Open. She beat Svitolina there, and she had some good results on the clay last year. And she's been really coming on, and actually find her game really fun to watch. She's got a lot of variety and angles, and she hits a lot of drop shots, good court sense, moves the opponent around well, and matches up really well against Fernandez and with her fight. And I guess it was definitely a match I should check out
Yeah.
on YouTube and catch the highlights if I can, because that sounds crazy. 5 match points saved to defend a title like that. That's pretty good stuff. It seems like she really likes playing this time of the year, I'd say.
Yeah.
Because I remember in 2020 she also made a final in Mexico,
Yeah.
Acapulco, I think, and lost to Heather Watson, and then she really come on strong, like winning 2 Monterrey titles in a row.
Yeah. It's Osorio is super incredibly fun to watch. I don't think I've watched highlights of her before, but her peak level, I'm not entirely sure she reached peak level, but she was playing extremely well for a while. I think her serve can be much better. But when she was on, it was hard because she was hitting the spots and not hitting hard. But she defends so well. She's so fast and like she uses the slice so like intelligently because she can cut it like really low and like just really kind of like set the trajectory very straight. Like imagine like a very Federer kind of slice or Ashley Barty, but like she can also use it just to like reset the point. And when she does it, you can tell that the point is completely neutral, like right away. So she really forces her opponents to like take more initiative. And it's not like she's dropping the slices near the service line either. She's like dropping them mostly like near the baseline. So it's not like it's just going to be a floaty shot that you can attack while waiting for the ball to bounce. So you cannot really hit an approach shot off of that slice. So you really are forced to either come to the net or attack from the baseline or reset the point and just go back to neutral. And that really kind of like threw Fernandez off for a while. But especially because she was attacking almost all of those shots, but Osorio just kept the point going and going and going. And I think it's a match that Owen would have loved to watch because if he enjoys SST so much, I feel like Osorio can be kind of like a step up from that game. Like she can actually like run for hours. Right. Maybe SST is a little bit more fit, but
she has the power as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. She can finish points like a lot easier. Fine.
Yeah,
very good at the net too.
I mean, I haven't watched her that closely, but she reminds me a lot of Ons Jabeur in the sense like the variety and then the injection of pace mid rally and just like changing the rhythm and using the slice and pretty quick around the court, pretty athletic. So she's gonna be quite fun to watch. It seems like she's doing well on clay and hard. So
another thing that I didn't realize is that she's only 20. So
yeah, already top 45. So she's definitely one to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, apart from that, I guess we should touch a little bit on the week before, because
of course,
quite a bit of stories. I guess while we're on the women, I guess we should talk about Iga Swiatek and her impressive run to the title last week in Doha. Obviously, this is a Masters 1000 that alternates. It's in Doha every even year, and it's in Dubai the other years. And for Swiatek, this was quite a big win, to cement herself on hard courts again after the Australian Open semis. And she obviously had a really tough draw here. And she absolutely thrashed Annette Kontaveit in the final. And before that, she beat, Maria Sakkari. Lost to 7 games there. And like just super impressive all around. Beat 3 top 10 players. Dropped a set to Victoria Golubic, who's quite a tricky opponent to play against.
Yeah.
Pretty nice one-handed backhand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess what stood out to you from Doha, Swiatek?
Yeah, I for one, I didn't actually watch, so I'm not going to be able to tell much about the tennis. But I think Swiatek is a player that just kind of really needs to figure out her game on fast courts and her serve on clay. But hold on. Sorry, I'm just recovering from a cold, and I'll be coughing a lot during this episode. But yeah, but what stands out for me is that once she won her first Masters 1000, well, I guess not Masters, but like WTA 1000 on hard court. Her second WTA 1000, and that actually makes her the 3rd straight year that she wins a big title on tour. So same old, I guess, with Swiatek, like just steady progress, but like steady progress up here, not like just not to compare like apples to oranges, but like Felix was steady progress, but like it took him a while to win a title. But like Swiatek is taking a while to like cement herself as like a top 5, like top 4, for us to really see her chances to crack into the top 3 even. I don't think she's ranked like top 5 yet, but like I think I can see her coming into the top 5 very soon. That's kind of like what I mean. So yeah, like it's a player who has a lot of consistency, just probably needs to find a little bit more on the winning side.
Yeah, I mean, I was so impressed by this week because the way she was, usually the playbook on her is, on fast courts you can rush her and sort of um, get her to hit forehands in uncomfortable positions and just kind of rush that wing and take time away. And she was able to really take the initiative and be aggressive earlier in the points, which I think really helped her because she was able to play on her terms. Her serve was working well. She was defending amazing. Her backhand cross court defense is just phenomenal. The way she can just turn points on a dime from defense to offense, I just find so amazing to watch. Especially the way she hits that sliding open stance backhand, and she can hit it down the line as well. It's one of the best shots in the women's game. Um, Definitely think her second serve can be a bit vulnerable at times, but then again, there's a lot of players on the WTA who thrive on winning second serve return points, and it's just kind of how you recover after that first step. And she seems to be a bit quicker after that first step in Dubai, and she seemed to be covering that forehand wing exceptionally well, and not only covering it but also like really creating some explosive power on her own and getting into the patterns she likes, which is going cross court, and then changing the directions, going down the line, using her backhand drop shot with two hands, coming to the net and really sort of beat Kontaveit at her own game. And she was doing a really good job of mixing the pace, getting it high, hitting some of those higher loopier shots too, and that's backhand, and then rushing a net and hitting these very good approach shots, finishing points at the net. She was really great in all facets, and it just shows she's a pretty complete all-round player. Kind of agree with you. Steady progress. She's now 4 in the world, so that's good to see.
So
like
she's top 5.
Yeah, I would like to see her, do well in the clay swing, obviously, because last year she lost to Sakari in the quarters, and Sakari is that's definitely a matchup she's not enjoyed. So for her to win against Sakari this week, I thought was a pretty big step forward for her. And she also beat Sabalenka, who was playing very well and not double faulting, and is starting to get back into form as well. So that was a great week in Doha. Coco Gauff was playing better again. Won a couple of matches. She beat Badosa, which was quite a good result for her in straight sets. And yeah, it just continues to be seen. I guess, one of the main topics on the WTA the last 6 to 8 months from the fans and everyone else has sort of been like, there's so many players that can win any tournament that they enter, and the depth is amazing, but we're not seeing rivalries and we're not seeing a whole lot of gatekeeping. And to that, I'd say to an extent, I would agree, but we're also seeing, if you take aside Raducanu, right? If you take aside Raducanu winning the US Open, because obviously that was something that's not been done before in the Open era, qualifier winning and all of that. And you take aside maybe Georgie winning in Canada, right? Just as an example. Most of the other big titles or players who have won titles now, you're sort of seeing like a big group of, let's say 8 to 15, so it's not quite like so open like anyone can win. It's more like you're seeing a good group of 8 to 15, which I guess on the men's side is smaller, right? But you're starting to see, the likes of like, I guess, Ash Barty, Krejcikova, Swiatek, Badosa. Like if you look at the top 10 of the rankings, like it feels right to me now. It really feels like, yeah, these have been the top 10 best players in the world. Obviously, Muguruza is still kind of trying to find her form. You got Pliskova returning from the hand injury, right? But if you just go down the rankings, and of course we know how capable Ostapenko is, and she's won the most matches of anyone this year, actually. So I guess there's more players in the mix, but it definitely feels like, we're getting to some sense of, I guess we're not at quite gatekeeping levels yet because there's just so much depth. But I feel like, we're the last 6 to 8 months, we've seen less chaos overall if you take outside the 2 runs.
Yeah, I feel like one of the problems with the WTA is that we have this group of 8 to 15 players really, but then we only have like really one that you can say this player is the one that you cannot really see anybody else like beating. When that player is Ash Barty.
Right.
By the time that Osaka comes back and maybe Andrescu, like can see players like this really gatekeeping again. But at this point, we just have this group of people, and if they start like losing this like fourth round or like quarterfinals, and necessarily like into the semis, like that's something that it becomes a little like rough, just because it having a 1 and 2 dynamic makes it interesting, because then we have like, for example, when we pick like Nadal and Djokovic, or Medvedev and Djokovic, or potentially now is more like Medvedev and Nadal. Then we have this dynamic, which is which side of the draw is gonna like open up, is gonna blow up first, right? Like, whereas for the women's side, it's just like, when is like, who is gonna blow out like in each side of the draw, like, as in, you can't really predict who's going to be in the final. And
most of the matches tend to be sort of concentrated in the first week. So it really feels
exactly,
like, the first week is sort of all the popcorn matches, and then it's kind of like last person standing and who is.
Yeah. And it's not like we get bad matches. It's just like, it's so hard to predict like who's going to be in the semis. And this is good, but it also can be a bad thing, just in the sense that, like, for example, Krejcikova is out now, and so suppose like Sabalenka, can you see her like making it into the semis? I'm not entirely sure, like, that this is the thing, right? So
depends on the draw, right? Depends on how she's feeling that week, and
exactly. I could see maybe Krejcikova making into the quarters. I couldn't really see her like making into the semis. I think it would have been hard. But if Barty was there, then it would have been a different game, right? I would have said, who's gonna beat Barty?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it is tougher for the casual fans to sort of get into the game, get into the women's game, because they're like, who's winning this? Who's winning this every week? And also us as well. I guess that's the same for us. But it's kind of interesting to see the chaos as well. So I kind of see both sides to it. It's like, it's one of those where it's like, it would be nice to just get a few rivalries going. Like last year we had Barty and Sabalenka, and they played a good number of matches, and they're, I think, 4-4 now as their head-to-head. So they're pretty even. And I guess if we get something similar like that, I mean, we're basically the closest thing we've got to that this year is like Kazakhina and Swiatek. They're like meeting almost every other week. But, that's not really one of those, I guess, top marquee rivalries between two top 5 players, which is why I really want to see Osaka back in the mix, and Barty, and them playing a lot more on the tour, so we can get, some of those clashes a bit more often than we're seeing in big events, and hopefully in later rounds of slams. I think that's the goal, and I think the WTA would benefit and everyone would benefit. So I completely agree on that. And yeah, Barty is not playing Indian Wells. She announced that she'll be skipping Indian Wells and Miami, and was gonna just take some time off, recover from her Australian Open, her grueling Australian Open, which was 30 games lost and 7 hours on the court. But nonetheless, it's. I guess it's kind of nice to see a number one from my perspective. It's kind of nice to see a number one sort of, know, like, plan their schedule the way she does, because it's clearly working for her, right? I mean, we saw last year, she was by far the best player, won like 5 titles, won Wimbledon, achieved sort of knocking off all of these goals. And for me, it's really all about US Open with Barty, and see what she can do there, because I'm really excited to see if she can complete that whole set. So I think, from a fan's perspective, we're definitely losing out from, not seeing her at Indian Wells in Miami, but I also get it. And I think she wants to be back for the clay season, and where she actually can gain quite a bit of points, because, last year she lost early at Roland Garros, so she can actually make up some points there. So that would be kind of interesting. But yeah, I guess from my perspective, since I'm going to Indian Wells, this upcoming week, I was really hoping she'd play this tournament, but she didn't really, cite a reason as to why she's not playing in terms of like physically what the problem is. So I think, I would have probably liked to see that, just to get a bit more clarity. But
yeah, I think in a way, I feel like Barty, because it was a very cathartic win like that to win in Australia, right? So
Yeah, very emotional. Took a lot out of her.
Yeah, took a lot of her emotionally. So I can,
Pressure-wise.
yeah, I can trace a bit of a a bit of a parallel between when Djokovic finally won Roland Garros in 2016.
Yep.
Just in a sense that like after that, Djokovic kind of like went into his slump and like just kind of like didn't find the motivation. And I feel like Barty's just like recovering just from that energy and just trying to regain a bit of the motivation to go back on court and like play to win. Because she already had an issue like that in the past. Like she didn't really find happiness on court. And
I'm
after
glad you
that,
bring that up. I'm glad
sorry,
you bring that up. I'm
yeah,
glad you bring that up, by the way, because I think it should be said that, a few years ago she took some time off, and
yeah,
it was for mental health reasons, and she wasn't enjoying competing and being, playing week in and week out on the tour, and she picked up other interests and she went and played cricket. She took some time away and spent time with friends and family, and she came back rejuvenated, fresh, ready to go, and she made her ascendancy to the top. So I think it's kind of part of her career and part of her story to take these breaks every now and then. And
yeah. Just kind of like when she took it last year, like by the end of it, she didn't. Did she play she lost the U.S. Open and didn't play Indian Wells? That was it. Yeah.
And then didn't play the rest of the year. So,
Yeah.
and I kind of understand because you're coming from Australia, and those tournaments are far away, and she's basically committed to living out of her suitcase for those 7 months because she never returned home, and with the quarantine rules and COVID and all that can be tough for, especially for somebody like Ash who has such a big strong support system and so well all of her base, everything is in Australia. So I think some of that gets misconstrued because people, they like to say like, oh, she's just having a good time, drinking beer, doing other things. She doesn't really care about tennis, and to me, I don't really see it quite that way. So, you know,
Yeah, I think she cares enough about it that she doesn't want to play just for the commitment, like the contractual commitment and then the prize money. Like I think she wants to do it well and wants to be in the right state of mind to actually play and get on court and play good matches, give the fans like what they paid for. So I think if she says she's not gonna play well, I think I'll just be like, yeah, whatever, just come back like whenever. Like I don't think that she's gonna take another like 2-year break or something like that, but who knows what she's defining as a next goal for after that. So
I always find this kind of interesting when top players schedule themselves like this, because it does feel like every time they step on the court, if they play fewer tournaments, like the stakes are so big, so every loss that you have just hits harder and it gets more attention, and the whole circus just keeps going because otherwise, compared to the players, like for example, who play every week and they sort of just take the L's and they it's a different phase of their career, right? Or someone like Coco Gauff, right, who had tons of hype around her, and rightfully she's a great player and she will be in the future as well, but bursting onto the scene in 15, and she's just sort of just playing every week, taking the L's, losing, learning, getting better. It's all about the long term, taking choking matches away. I mean that in a good way, like that's to get experience. And coming back from winning positions, pulling off upsets like she did against Badosa, not really winning it. She's won 2 titles, but nothing crazy. So it's kind of like, and then you have sort of players like who, don't play every week and they're sort of managing their schedule and they're doing it in blocks. So, I just find that interesting, because if you can get the balance right, then I'd say it works. It takes a special degree of skill and confidence and belief, I'd say, to, sustain that over and over again, And I think the big three, and Serena, and I guess, maybe now even Barty, because she usually does really well from a time off. And is able to come back pretty quickly. So with that, I guess we can move on to another guy who took a lot of time off, needs no introduction, Rafael Nadal. What a start to the year he's had, 15-0 to start the year. Obviously playing again in Acapulco, where he just loves those conditions. They're on a hard court, but high bouncing, high bouncing conditions at home. An event he's won 3 times before, but this time he was up. He had a really difficult, I'd say, projected draw, right? With 4 of the 5 top 5 players were in that field, and obviously it broke open, I'd say, until he placed Medvedev, and that's where we saw the rematch of the Australian Open. And this time, I actually went into that match feeling like, with the way the last three sets went in Australia, and the way that momentum has sort of shifted in that rivalry now, with Nadal obviously leading 5-1 in their head-to-head, but I feel like, 4 of those 6 matches have been really close. If you take out the Acapulco win and you take out their first meeting, they've all gone the distance and they've all been pretty tight and competitive. So even despite considering all of that, I just felt like the conditions and the tactics that Nadal employed in the last 3 sets of AO were going to translate very well on these courts here. And with everything else, I guess, going around in the world, with the Russia and Ukraine stuff, just never know how that's going to affect players from that country. And so that's definitely something I had in mind. And obviously with Medvedev clinching the year-end number 1. My bad. We're only in February. But clinching the number 1 for the first time. Non-Big Four player has done that since 2004 February. And the next match you have to play Rafael Nadal. And I just didn't think he played his absolute I don't think he played his best match at all. But on the other hand, I thought Nadal was superior in every facet of his game, and he just took control of that match. I think the score is a bit misleading, don't you think? 6-3, 6-3. It was over 2 hours, and definitely, there were 2 crazy games in the second set where I think the stat from that match is Medvedev was 0-11 on break points. In 10 of those 11 break points, Nadal saved emphatically with either forehands down the line, drop shots, service winners. I think in 10 of those 11 break points were won by a forcing shot from Rafa, an aggressive play mid-rally, or just really gutsy tennis. And just one shot was a backhand unforced error by Medvedev. So I think that just goes to show how clutch Nadal was in the latter stages of this match, particularly in the second set. I don't think the first set was very close at all. Breaking early, and we saw Medvedev really sort of confounded on how to play Nadal now. I think it's really become an interesting rivalry because you'd say on a hard court, Medvedev, the best player right now, right? And then you have with Djokovic not in, obviously, and we know how much trouble Djokovic has given Nadal on hard courts, but Medvedev's there's certain things that Medvedev still has holes in his game, like finishing from the net, forehand, creating offense. Apart from the serve, he found it really difficult to really create any kind of offense in this match. And the courts were playing extremely, extremely slow. And I thought Nadal's incredible returning, his variety as well in the middle of the match to like change up the rhythm, go to the drop shot, go to the slice, bring Medvedev in where he's not very comfortable. He hit some ridiculous passing shots and just anticipated really well. And it didn't seem like, and every time he hit a drop shot, it was a really interesting chess kind of a match because they're both so good from the back of the court. So they're trying to bring each other forward and win points that way. So whoever can really do that first is going to have a big edge. And I felt like every time Nadal hit even a not so good drop shot, he was able to get away with it because he could anticipate where Medvedev was going to go. And you saw Medvedev really just sort of confounded and going to serve and volleys and, trying to end points. I thought he was trying to play a lot more aggressive this time than he was in Australia. In Australia, he was really willing to go toe-to-toe with Nadal for the first 2 sets and really sort of outlast him. But this time he thought, okay, I'll just use more pace and more acceleration on my shots and just try and beat him that way. But it was just seems like he's confounded and it's too Nadal's.
I think in a sense, there are probably a lot of things that were affecting Medvedev at that point. Like one is like the obvious external reasons of Ukraine crisis in Russia, and obviously he must not be feeling very good about I
would think so. I think
you feel like a little, I don't want to say ashamed, but like a feeling of like a shared responsibility as a people. I think you can probably say put it in that manner. So walking on court is not as simple. There's always something like in the back of your mind like that, and not to take away anything from Nadal, as you said, like he was clutch, and Medvedev had 11 break points, so that's not like he was not trying to do anything. And the other thing is the number one ranking. Like a lot of things probably happen, and the loss to Nadal probably still like haunts him a little bit. He's probably, as you say, he's trying to be a little bit more aggressive. So he was probably trying new things and being just like Acapulco, like it's a 500 event. Like he probably used that as a little bit of like a test, as a test site, like his lab time. You know what I mean? He goes there and like we discusses with his coach, like what are we gonna do? Like what are we gonna try? Like if there's a time to try out new things, it's now. And getting this chance against Nadal, like is a pretty solid one. He probably would have liked to have at least another set, to keep trying to go at something. And you never really like to lose, especially going like down 5-1 in a new rivalry. But I think it's still going to be interesting to see where it goes from now. Of course, now we only have like 2 more hardcourt events. I'm not entirely sure if Nadal is even going to be committing to play both Indian Wells and Miami. Like, given the state of his body, I think he would just probably prefer to play Indian Wells, how it goes. And if he wins or he goes far, he might drop out of Miami, and just get his body ready for the clay season, where he probably like thinking, looking at it, like aside from Australia, I think he probably looks at the clay season as the most important part of the year for himself. But yeah, and Medvedev is entering the phase where he goes into his worst part of the season, which is clay.
Sure.
So I am sure that Medvedev is not going to want to end the hardcourt season, the first leg of the hardcourt season like that. He's not going to end up in a straight sets loss to a man who has come back from injury and like 6 off from injury and beat him twice in a row, one from 2 sets to lockdown. So I think Medvedev is definitely going to like give his heart out to try to win Masters 1000s events, where he does pretty well at those events. So yeah. And as far as number ones go, while it's the first time that a player like outside of the big 3 gets to number one, it felt the big 3, like the big 4 really, because Murray did it in 2016, but it felt pretty muted in a sense. Like it's the type of number one that comes in a little too gradually in a sense. Like it doesn't feel like there was any stakes at it. The number ones that just happened a few times, like in the women's tour, for example, when Karolina Pliskova hit number one for the first time, she had lost like first week of Wimbledon, and then somebody lost in the second week, and she ended up in number one, and she was in a practice court, like doing nothing, and then like, okay, I'm number one now. So like it feels like one of those. Not that he doesn't deserve it, like it's just he did a lot more of his work prior to the point where he becomes number one. Djokovic didn't play Australia, so he did lose a lot of points there.
Yeah,
of course, that's his fault. It's not many people to blame aside from himself. Like it's probably would take like at least like 90% of the fault on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm feeling like Medvedev wants to prove to himself and to the world that he really deserves this number one ranking, and it's not just because Djokovic didn't play or circumstances outside from his control. Yeah.
I definitely think he's deserving under the circumstances. If what happened to Djokovic obviously happened. It's not something he can control.
Yeah, and he still had to make the final because he was defending 1,200 points still.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of what ifs associated with that, but it's just like when a player doesn't show up because of an injury, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is sports. This is what happens. And considering all the circumstances, I would say on a hard court, the amount he's won the last 3 years and the consistency he's shown, and quarterfinals at Roland Garros, has played well in Monte Carlo and Barcelona before, so it'll be interesting to see if he can back up that and start to do better. I guess the only 3 big events he hasn't won is Australia and Indian Wells and Miami. Indian Wells obviously plays really slow, so it'll be slow and bouncy. So it'll be interesting to see how how he does in Indian Wells in Miami, and then we'll see where it goes. As for the rivalry, it's going to be interesting because I feel like Nadal has also added more layers, and he's also, sort of used it. I mean, not in a way as a test, because that sounds crazy, because every point Nadal really plays, it's with a purpose and intensity to win. And he even said after the match that I was lucky to win that second set, which I don't really buy, to be honest, because he was up a break the whole time. So it's more, it's definitely one of those where I think the 5-1
Yeah.
lead is a bit misleading, but it also is, it's impressive because you know like coming back from injury and winning two matches. Because I mean, he's 15-0 on the season, and those are the two standout wins for me. Like the other 13 matches, I mean, I guess you could say, and also the fifth set against Shapovalov, where he was really impressive, and with the heat stroke, and Shapovalov had all the momentum and all of that going. But apart from that, I think those are the two that really stand out. And it feels like he's sort of having one of those 2017 Federer type moments, at least to start the year, where you're kind of just riding that wave of playing freer again. And it seems like, and he's going bigger on the second serve. He's looking to finish points more quickly than ever. His forehand looked extremely devastating. And it doesn't look like he's second guessing himself. And it looks like his foot is doing much better, and it looks fine. So, and he's moving as well as he can for almost 36. So I would say it's going to be, it's definitely something that, we can't take for granted, because we don't know how long, because things change so quickly in tennis, right? So we don't know
Yeah.
how long it'll continue. At some point, he will definitely lose and the streak will be over. But it's definitely a good way to start the year if you're a Nadal fan, right? And
Yeah.
to have so much success, this is his best start ever to a season.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does in Indian Wells, an event that he's won 3 times as well. But yeah, and then I actually thought his toughest match was not against Medvedev, it was against Tommy Paul in the quarters, because he was actually down 3-5, and they played a set that was almost an hour and a half, and he won 7-6, and that was after a bagel in the first set. So he really had to dig super deep, and he had to come back from a breakdown twice, and it was really, really humid. And at one point he couldn't put the balls in his pocket because it was like he was just dripping with sweat everywhere, and everything was wet, and he was just somehow trying to wrestle control of the match back. And I don't even think he played his best in the final against Cam Norrie. Cam Norrie, of course, had another great week. Good to see him back up his results from last year. He's definitely backed up the Indian Wells result. Disappointing in Australia, but he definitely, winning Del Rey Beach and then now getting to the final here. He had a good win over Tsitsipas in the semis.
Yeah.
So he continues to do well, and of course Nadal, he got him in the final, but Norrie is definitely not one to be underestimated, and he's pretty tough to play with the straight arm backhand and the loopy, more traditional clay court type forehand.
Yeah.
That gives people a lot of problems. And then of course he's just improved every other part of his game too, by a small margin, but it's paying off in the big moments, and he looks mentally stronger. So
yeah, I think that his backhand is really the shot that Nadal can exploit, just because Nadal's backhand is just so much better. Like, he can play with a lot more variety, and if Norrie just wants to rally for too long, it's too flat, so it doesn't really just floats back, and Nadal can kind of like take control, unless Norrie wants to actually go for the angles and actually flatten it out and change directions and be aggressive with it. Like, the backhand is a little bit of a liability. If he's attacking and being aggressive, it's a good backhand, but if he's just trying to rally, I think it lacks a little bit of shape for it to be a good shot against people who are not counter punches. So
yeah, it's a good point, because against Rafa, he's definitely not one that shies away from creating pace. I mean, he can create pace no matter what.
Yeah.
So on his forehand, keeping it very low, because against players like even Tsitsipas and other players on the tour, he's troubled them a lot with that tactic of just slow balling them on the backhand. And it's not really more slow balling; it's more just like keeping it extremely low and with really low net clearance, but also getting really good margin on it. So he's able to get that skid through the court, and he's able to get it on slower surfaces as well. So it's extremely consistent. and you're then forced to change directions and go big with your. If you're a righty, you're forced to go big down the line with it, and then he can loop his forehand back into play and then get it into patterns that he likes. And he actually likes to take the ball early now and flatten it out on his forehand. But there's not really sort of one standout really big weapon in his game. And so I think that's what really hurts him against Rafa, because he, it's tough to get free points and get your ways off of baseline rallies, because Nadal is, like you said, is so good, and he has no trouble creating pace on his forehand or backhand from low positions.
Yeah. So
his pace generation is off the charts.
I have a question. Do people drop points at Indian Wells because he was held in like October last year, or are they only dropping in October?
I think the points actually only drop in October. So like Cam Norrie will only drop his points in October, but
they cannot add any, I'm supposing. He probably won't lose any, but he cannot add anymore because otherwise it would be a little bit unfair, I would imagine. So he kind of has a protected Indian Wells ranking until October, and then.
I would say because there's different events that were played. There's different events that were played at this time in March last year. So some of those points are now starting to drop, like Marseille and Acapulco and stuff like that. So if you had a good result or something there, then you'd lose those points here, but you can still gain from. He could still gain, but he'll probably inevitably lose some because of tournaments from the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would lose. Come October, he'd lose all the points.
Speaking of losing points, like how do you think Badosa will do in Indian Wells now this year? She hasn't really been going extremely well like the start of this year, but it's gonna be.
Well. I mean, she played well in Sydney, I thought, winning the 500 and beating Krejcikova in the final, and then she just kind of ran out of gas. Played a really good match against Kostyuk in the heat, and then she didn't have nothing left against Madison Keys in the 4th round, and then it loses to Coco Gauff here. But so it's kind of hard for me to gauge where her form is, and with the depth of the WTA, I can't really make a prediction as to how she's going to do. I guess I can look up her draw really quickly and see, but like it's. But I'd be surprised and not surprised if she won it again.
I think she's against Fernandez on round 3.
Oh, interesting.
Was supposed to take Krejcikova pretty soon, but then Krejcikova dropped out. So I think she ended up being like the highest seed in her part of the draw, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting, yeah, because Krejcikova was the number 1 seed, but now I saw she pulled out due to injury. So I'm assuming, would that make Sabalenka the number 1 seed now? Or actually, no. What happens is then a lucky loser would come.
Yeah, lucky loser,
Krejcikova. So I guess, that makes Badosa the highest seed in her section. I guess that would be, the thing is with Badosa is she's like one of those players who is so even off of both wings. Like it's, that's what I first noticed about her is I'm like, she doesn't really have a weak baseline game. Like there's so much, you can attack her forehand, you can attack her backhand, but when she's in form and she's taking the ball early, and she's the one area of her game that I feel like sometimes lets her down is her serve. Like it's not one of the best on the tour.
Yeah, I guess it's a pretty normal thing in the WTA tour, sadly. So it's not necessarily something that would count as a liability just because it's so common.
Her second serve can set up a little bit more, because I feel, it kind of goes in phases, because last year I felt like she was serving a lot better in Indian Wells at this time last year, but also it'll be a little bit of different conditions. But conditions that I think should suit her game. So it'll be interesting. I'd be probably surprised if she defended, because how many players are actually defending, Masters 1000s these days on the WTA?
Yeah.
Pretty hard, but I would. Actually, I saw that she's in SST's section. So if we get an SST versus Badosa.
I suppose the Badosa shouldn't necessarily. Well, I guess it goes both ways, but they know each other really well. So
it's hard to tell who that favors, right?
Because, you do have to give the edge to Badosa just because she probably knows where he hurts on SST, but I suppose SST knows how to defend those areas really well because she knows that Badosa knows. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
I hope we get that match.
I hope we get like that match, and I hope it is like really long and like.
Yes, I hope it's like 4 hours plus. I really do. I think that's tennis and Diggles people will go.
I just hope if it goes that long, I really hope it's not like a morning match, like an 11 a.m. match, because that
Oh
would
yes.
be absolutely terrible.
I want it to be night session and under the lights because I want people to know because like SST played a really good match at Wimbledon against Kerber and not
Yeah.
anybody knew about it, including myself. I wasn't able to watch because I mean I was at work and also there was like other big matches going on at the same time. Like I remember Federer was playing against Gasquet and there were other matches on court one and so like her that match was on court two and so if you actually you know, like have a different stream or ESPN
Hmm.
Plus or something like that. You could have actually seen it, but it was.
Yeah.
I wish the Wimbledon YouTube page like uploads the full match.
Yeah. Not everyone is doing like the Australian Open did this year, like just pretty much a
Yeah,
couple hours after the match is done, like they upload the full thing.
yeah. I guess on Acapulco, something else that really stood out to me
Yeah.
is Stefan Kozlov. So he's this
Mm.
guy who was really good in juniors and got to two major finals in juniors and got to like 115 in the world. But then he just declined. He had a lot of injuries. He had um, like just poor results after that, and his ranking just dropped. And he hasn't done much until the end of last year. And he's done well in challengers, and he got his ranking back up. And I remember he took a set off of Berrettini this year in the second round of Australia,
Mm.
and he was actually a lucky loser in qualifying.
Yeah.
And this story fascinates me because Dimitrov was supposed to play Maxime Cressy, and Maxime Cressy pulls out. And so he's given, and Kozlov is practicing against Nadal. And they're playing a practice set, and it's 3-all. And Kozlov breaks a string, and he goes to his bag, and he just to get a new racket, and he just had this intuition, like, oh, let me just check my phone. He checks his phone, and he gets a bunch of messages from the supervisor saying, "You're up. You're a lucky loser, but you're up to play against Grigor Dimitrov. So pack your bags and go." And he
Yeah.
had to basically stop the practice. And I think there were other things that happened that day with him. Like he was on Acapulco beaches, like surfing,
Yeah.
and
He he
his
almost got caught in like a sea accident.
yeah, he
Almost
was
screwed
left
over.
stranded, and he didn't have a like a boat to come and rescue him. And like finally his team like got himself a boat, so he was worried like hopefully I don't get stranded here by sea. Forget about playing tennis. And he did not hydrate and he didn't really like wasn't prepared like to play a match. But he,
Yeah.
he came on the court. And as you can imagine, probably low on fluids, low on food, everything. And he plays this weird match against Dimitra, but very, very entertaining. And they have these all kinds of rallies. He's one of those slow bowlers who throws in a lot of junk, but is extremely, if you actually watch him play, you're like, how is he winning? Because he's, just casually manipulating the ball. He's taking it early, but it's very slow kind of pace. Doesn't really have much on his shots, but he can maneuver the ball really well and he can put the ball in awkward places. And it's really hard if you don't have like big finishing weapons against him. And Dimitrov really struggled to hit through him because he's really fast. And they had this wild first set and Grigor wins it and they're in the second set. And then out of nowhere, he has this full body cramp, Kozlov, and
Yeah.
just falls flat to the ground. And it was getting really worrying whether he was even going to be able to continue. How is this going to work? The doctors were out on court and helping him basically walk, stand up, get back to the chair. It looked like he was going to retire. I thought for sure he's retiring.
Yeah.
Dimitrov probably thought the same, which was not good for him in hindsight. And and it was one of those really, really insane matches because then you're thinking like, how in the world is he even going to finish, let alone like think about starting the third set, let alone winning it. And then he somehow goes up a break in the third set and comes up with these amazing shots, like on the run, like on his forehand, just like slapping forehand cross court winners, like on the dead run on defense. And Dimitrov kind of not being able to finish and, allowing Kozlov back in these rallies, like not finishing on the overhead, like making some free mistakes, giving, some costly double faults. And next thing you know, like Kozlov was serving first and he just needed one break and he comes through in like 3 hours and 15 minutes. This is insane. Like he couldn't even walk. and all of a
Yeah.
sudden he's playing like the match just started, in the middle of the third set. And I just thought, like, amazing, from like just an amazing story. And for Dimitrov, I just thought, man, like that's really a match. That's one of those matches where, forget about the matches that you've had against the big three, but that's really one where, you got to find a way to win that.
Yeah, it's
Because
true. Yeah. I guess Dimitrov at this stage of his career, he's either having like a second spring, or this is it for him, in the sense that, like,
yeah,
what can we expect more? Like, in a sense, he already achieved a lot, to be
I think I
fair.
kind of expect more of the
Yeah.
same. Just kind of 2 or 3 big runs a year,
Yeah.
and a lot of other,
Yeah.
lose one, win one type thing. And I guess that's all right, because we've sort of tempered our expectations, and we know kind of, and we know what his ceiling is, which is
Yeah.
2017. So
Yeah.
he can still bring it on, but
Yeah.
it's just,
And speaking of expectations, I was talking to you about Raducanu before we started recording, and
yeah,
I just wanted to talk to her, to necessarily about it, like, just because there's a lot of people just saying, like, oh, we're expecting another, like, Leylah Raducanu final, and like, it's interesting because their so-called rivalry is essentially made up on wishful thinking, in the sense that, like, we
yeah,
expect them to, like, meet again, just so that, because there was a bit of drama in that match, and of course there was a lot um of press on the fact that, like, Leylah was doing extremely well, and then Emma was doing extremely well as well, and they both had completely different paths to the final, but they're also just two 19-year-old girls, like, born like 2 months apart, like a month apart, and come up like completely different careers at that point, and now they're just meeting in the U.S. Open final, almost like out of nowhere. And now Leylah has just won a second title, and she's been a little bit more consistent. I think Raducanu, ever since like the U.S. Open run,
yep.
she either lost or had like extremely difficult 3-set matches that she had to win. So
Right.
it's the expectations for me on Raducanu is I don't think I don't want her to lose, in a sense. Like, I'm not those people that are just like, oh, I just wish you like have a terrible career now because you're a fluke. I don't think that. Like, I feel like she has the game. Like, if you win a Grand Slam, regardless of like the way that it happens, you have the game. So,
She
but
absolutely has a game.
but my expectations is just, now, instead of like projecting her against like the big players and like how's she gonna do next, is I really want to see like what's she gonna do every match, because like winning consistently now, like, this is, and it might be ugly, it might be like a Nadal Tommy Paul type of match that you have to really find a way, but I feel like I'm expecting her to now start finding a way to win the matches. And obviously she had an injury, had to retire from her match in Guadalajara, very sadly, but yeah, I think now it's just expecting match by match from her, and not tournament by tournament, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think she should just really just take it 1 week at a time, because I think your whole life just changes after you win a major like that. It doesn't matter who you really beat, because she beat the players in front of her, and she still had to beat Belinda Bencic, who won the Olympic gold medal. She still had to beat Sakari, who's one of the
Sakari,
most
who just completely
players.
had like one of the matches of the tournament against Andreescu, like, seriously.
Exactly, like, and she's a very formidable top 10 player, and like, she destroyed Sorribes Tormo. Like, she beat whoever was in front of her, and she did it without dropping any sets. And I think 34 games lost. Like, the stats just speak for themselves. And when you do a big breakthrough like that, and you come from a country like England, like, I mean, I would seriously think the hype would be a lot less if she didn't come from Great Britain. Just because of the history in tennis, and all the different people and powerful people that have a platform that like to speak and hype up Raducanu. I mean, as for the rivalry, I just hope they ever meet. I don't care like in what round, but my thing is that I think we should just go easy on these people, because like Raducanu, I actually came back. I came back from Australia feeling really encouraged about her, because she beat Sloane Stephens. Bagels her, and then loses the second set, and then plays a very good third set, even though the scoreline was a bit misleading, 6-1. And then she then loses her next match, but she's dealing with blisters, and she finds a way to stay in the match somehow. and just win with her forehand slice. Like that's something I hadn't seen from Raducanu before. When we saw her win at the US Open, everything was on her terms. She was always in the lead. She was playing with nothing to lose, and she was playing fearless, and it was working. But I didn't see a side to her of like problem solving or being forced to come up with new ways to win and win ugly, right? And I saw that a little bit in Australia, and she didn't win, but I thought her attitude and her outlook on the match overall in the tournament really changed for me. I thought, okay, this is a player who is tough, like really tough mentally, and actually has other gears she can go towards. And she's trying to right now. She's just trying to go on the tour, play week after week, stay injury free. Number one, which is really important. Block out everything else around her, which is insanely hard, especially when you don't have. I mean, also with her coaching situation, like she prefer to have, someone for a really long period that she can work with. And you also have to remember that during the off season she had COVID, so that compromised her entire preparation and her season. Like with little prep, she was still able to beat Sloane Stephens, and like play a memorable match against Danka Kovinic, like second round. Who's a good player herself. So I would just like temper the expectations, and I do think soon the results will come. Like because I just feel like she has the maturity, and she has the head of someone who's mature far beyond her years, and it's definitely not a fluke what she did at the US Open. So I would say just give her like maybe 6 to 8 months, or give her a year even. Like it's gonna happen. And I worry a little bit about Wimbledon, with all the hype and the pressure.
Yeah.
But
especially because she did well last year too. So
but yeah, it's just kind of one tournament at a time. Like just play week to week and just gain tour experience, because this is so unprecedented what she did.
Yeah, I think it wasn't a fluke, but it was obviously like their stars were aligned in a sense for her, like in that a lot of things happen well to her, like, but you still have, as you said, like properly, she still had to beat the player in front of her. But yeah, I feel like she needs to establish herself as a player on tour, and get more used to losing tough matches. And I think she's getting there, because she definitely has had her share already after the US Open, and getting used to it ugly. And I think it's gonna come. Like it's honestly has been 6 months ish since the US Open, right? So that's not a really long time, especially because, as you said, like there was COVID and there was off season. There's a lot of things happening. So
not to mention there was also a stalker who
oh yeah, there was a stalker too. Yeah.
And, I mean, that can be easy to deal with, right?
No, yeah. She herself, that was the first time that I saw her talking about something that made her actually feel negative. Like, like as everything was like, oh yeah, no, I'm just blocking it out. I'm just doing it my way. And I'm just want to see like how it goes. But like this one time, that's when it felt like that she definitely felt it, like in her core, like as in that shook her a bit. So yeah.
I also just saw a different energy around her playing when the stakes were higher, like in the Australian Open. The way she got up for that Sloane Stephens match, I mean, that just really impressed me. I mean, that's where I thought, like, okay, wow, like that's different kind of intensity, different kind of
work. It's gonna be cool. Like when she starts finding ways and staying injury free, playing. Losing not necessarily because something happens to your body, but just because it's a tough match, and the other player was just better.
Seems like it'll be tougher on the slower surfaces as well. Well, should really have to grind and construct points.
It's gonna be interesting to see on clay like what happens. I'm excited for that too. Which, speaking of which, is coming, and last 2 tournaments on hard, and we transition to Europe.
Yep, and then we got Monte Carlo, and we got the entire clay swing. And speaking of Monte Carlo, because I guess Djokovic is from there, he played in Dubai, right? He played after 3 months, so a long time without any match play, I guess. And it was one of the countries that allowed players to come in if you weren't vaccinated, and the crowd and everyone there had to be. But he got there and he played 2 good matches against Musetti and Khachanov. I thought he actually looked really good towards the end of the Khachanov match, and handled Musetti pretty well. And I honestly thought Yuri Vesely played one of the best matches of his life. Like he played one of the best. That was one of the best tactical performances I've seen because he's a guy who I think was out of the top 100 last year. He got into a car accident and actually had to like took a lot of time to recover. And we've seen what he can do on faster surfaces. He beat Team that 1 year at Wimbledon in the first round, and he's pulled off upsets. He beat Zverev at Wimbledon. He has beaten Djokovic before in Monte Carlo, so he's definitely a dangerous player. Not somebody who you want to see in your draw, like sort of a dangerous floater. And he'd come off beating Cilic and RBA, who had won a title the week before. So he was in some really good form. It wasn't just only Djokovic. He then backed it up and got to the final. But against Djokovic, this guy was returning since Djokovic's serve so well. I mean, he won 58% of Djokovic's second serve points, which is just crazy. Like, and he was able to sustain it the whole time, and he was hitting his backhand really flat, low. It was skidding through the court. The court is lightning quick in Dubai. It's a really, really fast court. And the ball stays really low, and he was serving well. He was coming to the net. He was Djokovic, I thought, was a little bit rusty in some big moments. He hit a couple of crucial double faults. Still found a way to break serve and get back into the match. And then Vesely played a really good tiebreak and hit a lot of winners and came to the net like 26 times. And yeah, it was just one of those matches where I was like, okay, that had the ingredients for an upset, but definitely also shows that it's hard to just show up and win tournaments, after 2 or 3 months. Like you need match play and you need rhythm, and Vesely definitely really deserved it because then he took out Shapovalov in a really close match. Very well played.
Yeah. And lost to a pretty confident Rublev, honestly. Like
yeah, I did
Rublev,
also feel like he was a bit tired from a long week.
That's the thing
final,
too.
But Rublev played really well, and he won back-to-back titles. And
and Rublev is probably feeling a lot better now. He broke a little bit of a drought in terms of a match of title winning.
Yep, the last 3 tournaments were great for him. Rotterdam series and Marseille final, and it all started with those 2 wins. I think against Gasquet and Puy, because he found himself a breakdown in the 3rd set in both matches. I think Gasquet even served for the match in Marseille. So to get out of those matches and then find a way to win, and he's shown some nice and toughness. Just want to see what he can do now at the Masters 1000 level.
Yeah, as always.
We've seen this with him before. He's really good in 500s and 250s. And I thought the match against Hurkacz was impressive, actually, because Hurkacz, won the first set, and he beat Rublev in Miami in the semis when the stakes were a bit higher last year. And he does well on faster courts. Because he's really good at redirecting pace.
Yeah, it's still the same. Even though Rublev has his own narrative, and the players that he can beat and the titles that he wins, but it's still a little bit of the same script. Still, like, it hasn't changed much in the sense that we still need to see. We still need to see him beating Medvedev and Djokovic and Nadal, which is not an easy task. But still needs to beat Zverev. I don't like to say his name, but we have to at sometimes.
One of the worst matchups for him. Like he just can't hit through him.
Pretty much every player that is above him in the rankings. That's the guys that we need to see him beating. Even like Tsitsipas, it's just like, okay, everybody else that's below you, we know that you can beat those guys, but everybody's above you. Like, how do you do?
Yeah, and that's the next step for him. And until we see that, I guess then you can really say, because he did have isolated runs last year. Maybe it's not like he got to number 5, but he had 3 big results. Like he got to the Monte Carlo final where he beat Nadal in the quarters. Nadal didn't play a good match, but he still had to beat him. It was, he still had to do it. And then he beat Medvedev in the Cincinnati semis, and then he lost handily in both the Masters finals he played to Tsitsipas and Zverev, and he's made 4 major quarterfinals. And each time he's ran into Nadal, Medvedev twice, Tsitsipas. So, and he's not won a set in any of these matches, I guess. So that's the more concerning thing for him, is just when he gets to these matches, does he have that extra gear? Does he have? Yeah. I don't think that necessarily means adding variety, because I think, I think he can be a great player without adding variety. I think there's other issues as well, like his second serve. I think it's definitely one of the worst. Second serves in the top 10.
It's just a different, because he's hitting a wall in a way that is different from Felix's when he hit the wall
Yeah.
about winning titles. Because like Felix, we knew that he was capable of doing it. It was just that he was playing mostly badly in his finals,
Just
and that
making a lot of errors, right?
yeah, it was just like nerves, and it was like who showed up today? This is not Felix, and like Rublev is like Rublev showed up, but Rublev didn't. Like you know exactly like what's going to happen most of the time. So it's like the wall is like, what can you do strategically, tactically, tennis wise, that is going to allow you to win? Maybe there's some mental in this game as well, but a lot of it is just questions that is amounting to not necessarily like when are you going to do this, but like are you really capable of winning? Which is probably like a most horrible wall to reach. Like that's my view on him. But I agree with you. Like I think that he needs to improve a bit.
I also think
Sorry, yeah.
mentally,
This is the
I
second
think
serve,
it's
yeah.
interesting. It's interesting because mentally, I mean, we like a lot of people think of him as a really intense player, point in and point out. They sort of compare it to that Rafa mentality. But I also think that intensity all the time sometimes lets him down in a way where mentally it's tougher
Yeah.
for him.
Maybe
If
it's
something
a
goes bad in the middle of a
yeah,
match, he tends to really go down on himself in dark.
yeah,
And I think that's
yeah,
something that he can definitely control. I mean, I'm
yeah,
not saying it's easy. It's one of the hardest things to do if you've played tennis, to stay more even keeled and just relax a little bit. It's tough because
yeah.
I've seen him like hit himself with a racket and take it out on himself, and you just never want to see that. I mean, at that point, you'd rather just break the racket, right, and get a court violation.
Yeah.
So at that point, I feel like that's a place where he could really use, psychology or
Yeah.
psychologist, somebody like that to help him.
Yeah. I think
Feel.
it's in a sense
And then, but game wise, I agree with you. Yeah, like the second
yeah.
serve, and
I think
definitely he has a
yeah.
ceiling and limited number of ways to
Yeah.
win the same kind of points. It's
Because I think he could be a solid top 5 player. I think he does have that, I believe. I think he needs to add like variety, not necessarily to use it like as an Onze Jabeur variety, but like just to make that one change at some points. Like you had a crucial like 30 all or like 15-30, and you drop like
yeah.
a drop shot at some point, like oh, and nobody's expecting that to happen. Something like that. It's just like
Because I
very
feel like if you get
sprinkled
used to
here
his
and there, and yeah, just using it
good point,
like when Medvedev was like serving volley, like you know that he's not good at it, but he does it and it works because you don't expect that to happen.
yeah.
So I find like in a sense it's
What I'd
just
also like
really
to see from him is finishing, like coming to the net and finishing points. Because he's not. I mean, obviously, I know he's not very comfortable at it, but he hits so many good forehands. Enough. He gets enough width on a lot of those where
yeah
he could just be coming in and finishing it off,
yeah
even if it's just a swing volley or just coming in a bit more.
yeah. So
Because like he also doesn't have a great backhand slice, and that's difficult to that's difficult, especially if you. I remember Fuchsovich like got him in the last 2 sets of Wimbledon because he just kept the ball really really low and he forced Rublev to slice, and he never went for it. It's not a trusted shot that he really likes to trust with, and I think players can get comfortable if you can mix up the pace against him and you can get him really high up on the backhand, or you can
yeah
get him playing cat and mouse, or you can bring him forward, or you can
yeah
do these kind of things, and it's just kind of like it's a good forehand, and it's got like strong linear pace to it is what I'd say,
yeah
but it's very straight through the court. It's like straight shooting,
yeah
it's not so much angles and opening up the space and then hitting to the open
yeah.
court.
So
More
yeah,
than
I feel like in a lot of ways, not to sound
like, for
well,
example,
don't want to sound harsh again, like again
Tsitsipas
against
has a
Rublev. Yeah,
versatile forehand, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
he can really, he knows when to flatten it out. He knows when to put spin on it. He
yeah,
can hit the angles. He uses it really smartly as a way to, and then he follows it up with his transition game. So like a player like that has more options.
yeah.
But Rublev is very simple, sort of, okay, this is my game plan, boom, boom. And I feel like it works very well for him when he gets the first serve in.
Yeah,
Because then he's winning points quickly and
because I
yeah.
think he hit a good point in how Rublev does hit great shots at times that should allow him to win the point and finish it off. And so I think in a way, what a lot of us are not necessarily seeing is just the micro details in his game that he could use to win certain points in certain matches, well, not matches, but like certain occasions that would make the matches a little closer, because he should have the potential to make a match against Tsitsipas close, or against Zverev, especially if it's just defending. I think Rublev should be able to be more calm and like hit through him or finish the points a little bit more often, because a lot of balls could flow back to his racket if he goes to the volley and finishing it off. So it might not even be that he's not good enough, or that his mental game isn't good enough. It just might be that he's making poor decisions in crucial times, and we're just missing those at times. Like just because he might be so consistently the same,
for sure.
it might numb our minds to see what happens.
I just like to see something a bit different, like calculated in his mind, because when you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, you start to feel really comfortable, and you start feeling like, okay, this is really something I can just make a career out of doing what I'm doing. I'm making millions of dollars. I'm winning. I've now won 10 titles. I can just sort of stay top 5, top 6. But like, to get to that very next level, you've got to be able to, one, believe that you can do it mentally in a big situation. And for that, you need big training block and like actually a lot of reps, and like something that like his coach or his team would like need to sit down with him and just be like, okay, we need to spend like 1 month and just like fix your second serve. We need to spend like 1 month and just like make sure you've ironed out your, like, these things are tough. Like, he's already going to be like 25 in the world, and he's like sort of now in the prime of his career, right? Like, if you will, like, I mean, I don't really see his ceiling being way higher than it is right now. I could be wrong about that, but definitely feel like we kind of know who he is as a player. So it'll just be kind of like, what's the next thing? And so
I think we could. I think still see.
I think it's good that he can play on all the surfaces, though, because I think that's good. Like, he's made a final on grass as well, and for all you know, like, maybe Wimbledon could go well for him. Maybe he can get to the quarters again, or I guess one round further is the goal, right?
Yeah. So, I feel like it's in a way, it might not be a a breakthrough win, but really just kind of
solidifying what we know.
Like a breakthrough tactic that he has to his game. Like, at some point, like, he shows up with like a big second serve, like, well, now there's a totally different player. Like, it could be something like that to Rublev. So definitely really a unique player. Yeah.
He plays a lot of tennis.
He does.
He played over 77 matches last year, and he didn't even. I mean, this is a guy who had no off season, because he finished at Davis Cup, and then he was back 10 days later playing in Mobudala exhibition.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, he just doesn't really take a break, and he just sort of goes week to week to week to week.
Yeah.
You're gonna have down moments in a season.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens to his body on this one.
Yeah.
But I think
we'll have to see, because I think last year he also had a strong start, and then kind of Monte Carlo second half of the year, fell down a bit. So I think the main goal for him is the slams. At least be getting to the quarters consistently enough so you keep getting cracks, and then eventually, you'll find a matchup that works better for you, or you'll finally win one against one of these guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could happen. So I think that pretty much concludes our thoughts that we had for this week.
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, Murray is back with Ivan Lendl, so that's a good.
Yeah, that is true.
For Murray fans.
If you want to know more about Murray news, you can always head to Murray Musings podcast. And
shout out to them. They're doing great work, actually. They had Wanda on their episode. The Wanda is definitely somebody you want to be following right now on Twitter. Just good vibes all around, getting selfies with all the players.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of the players are even like just honored to get a selfie with her. They're like, this is on my bucket list. Let's make this an annual thing. I saw Sebastian Corda tweet that out.
Yeah.
So that's that's amazing.
Really
and
cool.
I think Peter as well is in Indian Wells right now. And he's doing some good work.
And also shout out for Murray Musings, because I just realized that they passed 1,000 followers on Twitter. So pretty big step forward.
Very much well deserved.
Absolutely.
They got Judy Murray on their podcast, so they're killing it.
They should be at 10,000 at this point. So.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I guess Andy is the goal, but
when they get Andy, they can close the podcast.
They can.
The last podcast episode, like interviewing Andy Murray.
Right.
This guys, if you get Andy Murray, just get him another 10 times in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, and then we had Djokovic obviously split ways with Marian Vida.
Yeah.
We'll just have
that
to see how
has
that
also
evolves.
happened.
We'll have to see how that evolves because, the last time,
He
he
came back with Marian afterwards, so
yeah, and they had a reunion. So, definitely could happen.
yeah,
Could
we'll
happen
see.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, he's been his coach since 2006, so they've had and at some point, he's been traveling with him for over 15 years. So I'm assuming he probably also just needed a bit of a break.
Yeah, maybe it was a Marian Vida decision as well, like just try to stay.
I also know that it has nothing to do with the Australia saga and everything going on because Sasha Osmo confirmed that on Twitter. I saw. So it was definitely a mutual split that they had in the end of last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll just have to see what's going on with that. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers it, right? For this week, and yeah, we'll have the three of us back, and we'll talk some Indian Wells, and we'll
hopefully we can catch up on some matches now.
Yeah, catch up on some tennis.
Wishing luck to Owen in his midterms, and
yep,
we'll be back soon. You can follow us at VanshV2K on his Twitter, and me and at Rolenberg Andre. Dang it. Owen is at Tennis Nation. Sorry?
I'm be more active on Twitter now.
Oh yeah, Vansh is back on Twitter. We were missing his if you missed his stats like we do, like just keep following him. He's gonna keep putting up a few more. He already started. Like doesn't know his first tweets when he came back.
Right.
And don't forget to follow us at Tennis and Bagels on Twitter. And if you have other platforms, I'm trying to be more active on Instagram as well. Tennis and Bagels as well. So for Tennis and Bagels as well. This name is very unique. Nobody else has it. So
yep. And also you can find Andre and Owen's tweets by going to Stefanos Tsitsipas' Twitter.
That's true. We got retweeted.
So Steph, if you're listening to this,
hit us up.
We'd love to have you as a guest.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also follow Popcorn Tennis because they're doing great work and
we both write from time to time for them as well. So
yes, we both are happy contributors for Popcorn Tennis, and we love to see it grow. Actually, just saw that they got Blair Henley on, so yeah, check all their work out and subscribe, follow us, enjoy, and obviously, we're going to send our best prayers and wishes to everyone in Ukraine. Tough times with the war ahead, and hopefully things get better soon, quickly, and peace and love to all the families. And so got through it.
All right, so that does it. So, all right, goodbye. See you next time.